It was just last Tuesday that a guest on this show warned Australian bosses, if you have got staff in China, think about getting them out now. They are not safe. Now, I didn't know, as he was speaking, that on that very day, the Australian embassy in China was giving that same warning to these two correspondents and their bosses. Get out. You aren't safe. Too late. Chinese state security swooped. I'm joined now again by that guest who last week gave that warning on this show. Michael Shoebridge, Director of Defence Strategy and National Security, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Michael, thank you for joining me again. Now, obviously, you can't say that you're surprised by China moving against our two last foreign correspondents in China, but how worried are you by it?
Andrew, great to talk to you. I think what we're seeing was unfortunately easy to predict. But what we're seeing is bigger than Australia and China. This is Xi closing China more and more off from the external world. So we've already seen US journalists from the New York Times, the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal expelled. We're now seeing Australian journalists expelled. And we shouldn't think they will be the last journalists from the last countries, but we also shouldn't think they will be the last foreigners subject to arbitrary interrogation and detention by China. He's doing this to his own people. He's just started a purge of his own internal security apparatus, the People's Armed Police and the Ministry of Public Security. If he's willing to do that to his own internal security people, we should be crystal clear that Australians are not safe within China's jurisdiction.
Well, how do you read what President Xi is doing? Is this a desperate man trying to create distractions because he's created so many enemies with his purges over the years, or is it really gone to his head? Is he really, I don't know what's going on. How do you see it?
I think it's a mix of both those things. No one can see the need to arrest and detain foreigners as a confident China and a confident Chinese government. But I think even more a statement of anxiety is this large internal purge of the people he uses to repress the rest of the Chinese citizens, the People's Armed Police and the Ministry of Public Security, a regime that has to purge its own internal security personnel because it's worried about their reliability is a deeply anxious one. So I think the projection of Xi is powerful. We need to keep in mind this huge anxiety that he has about the security of his own rule.
And that obviously means he would be tempted to get people to back him as a nationalist leader, create an external enemy. We've seen this so often in history. And, well, there's a risk. You miscalculate. You provoke a reaction you weren't expecting. You thought people would be scared of you. What do you think is the risk of war, and where?
Well, I think the risk rises as long as each country engages with Beijing bilaterally. So, today we're talking about the Australian journalists, but the Indian press is talking about the open threats that Chinese state media is making against India. And you can pick any day when a country is being threatened by Beijing in very similar ways. So I think a way of reducing the risk of war is to have more of us act together against Beijing and against Beijing's coercion, rather than thinking that we're lonely and we're the only ones facing this problem. That's the key, because Beijing needs the rest of the world, and Xi at some level understands that.
Well, we've seen Australia actually reaching out to India and Vietnam and Japan, and so obviously our leaders are starting to see that, and of course we've got the alliance with America, which is very important. Beyond that, obviously one of the great levers China has over us is the fact that it's our biggest trading partner. And you see the way that business community are cowed into not criticising because they think, oh, well, our exports will be killed. US President Donald Trump overnight said, and it's not for the first time, he's pushing ahead with disengaging with China, being less dependent, being encouraging US companies to cut back on investments there, come back to America. Here he is again last night.
We're going to end our reliance on China because we can't rely on China. And I don't want them building a military like they're building right now, and they're using our money to build it.
It's easier said than done with us, with our huge exports, Michael, but should we do something similar?
I think in every area where China isn't structurally dependent on us, yes, we should. But where they're structurally dependent, and I'd count iron ore and energy as two areas where they are structurally dependent, they need us more than we need them. They cannot get what we sell them at the scale and at the prices and quality anywhere else, and they simply need it to keep their economy working. In that case, we should realise we have leverage. I always think it's interesting that Russia apparently has enormous leverage over Germany because it supplies Germany with critical resources and energy. But down here in Australia, apparently we're powerless when we do the same to China. So I think we need to remember our own leverage, but also it's not just Donald Trump that is making businesses disengage from the Chinese economy, it's Xi. There is no way that businesses can look at China as a low-risk proposition now, regardless of what Donald Trump is doing, but it gives us a reason to work with a huge economic partner like America.
Michael Shoebridge, thank you so much again for your time. Your warning last week, I think it'll be heeded even more now. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andrew.